I'm Heather.
And I'm Desiree.
And you're listening to
the Perpetually Overdue Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perpetually Overdue Podcast. I'm Desiree.
And I'm Heather.
And this week, we are discussing a fun topic that has very much been a hot topic recently on social media and just in general. And that is that the performing arts are not dead. I bet you know where this is going. And so we want to talk about the discussions that have been circulating the internet surrounding the popularity, the relevance, and importance of the performing arts, particularly, as many of you know where this is going, ballet and opera.
Should we discuss what the matter is before we
True. Let's not
that?
keep them in suspense, because maybe some people are like, what are you talking about?
Highly doubt. Even if you don't know this actor, if you've been looking at the award season at all, it has been heavily discussed. And that is, what did Doja Cat call him? Timothée Shamalama or something like that?
I love all the variations.
I do too. So he basically was doing sort of like an actor on actor interview with Matthew McConaughey. And he made a comment, and funny enough, it's not his first comment like this, but for whatever reason, this comment went viral not too long after the interview aired, and because it's award season, because he was up for an Oscar, it just took off like wildfire. But he basically was talking about cinema and the relevance of cinema and wanting only to do that and not to do ballet or opera. Like, he basically explicitly said he doesn't want to do those things because to keep it alive, because no one cares. And that got a lot of people talking. It got a lot of people talking who are in those industries, but it got a lot of people talking who enjoy those art forms. And it was very interesting because there's a lot of theories about why he said what he said and what was the real meaning behind it. There's a lot of speculation going on about that in general.
Let's talk about just our opinion on the matter.
Yeah.
For example, I grew up in musical theater and the performing arts. That was a huge passion since I would have initially said middle school, but if I really think back, I mean, I was in my neighborhood during elementary with friends, putting performances in the awning of people's driveway. Me and my friends went and touched grass, and we made dance performance on roller skates, and we charged the neighborhood for like Friday night, 6:00, come to our driveway. And so performing arts of many different varieties was something that personally I fell in love with growing up. And so when I actually started pursuing theater in high school, I started dance in middle school onto high school, which then led to me discovering my love for musical theater. It was something that, again, I just became very passionate about. So now in my adulthood, sadly, those were not routes that I ended up taking in life, but I still hold an appreciation for those things. So personally, when I heard about what Shalalama said, I was just very kind of, probably like many people, taken aback because I was like, okay, well, maybe you don't care about them because you don't go to the opera or the ballet, but worldwide, and again, typical America to think that life revolves around us, but I'm like, worldwide, these art cultures are still very prevalent in many societies. So found it very interesting that he would say such a bold statement with his full chest.
Oh yeah, and he did say it with his full chest, and even made like a snarky comment afterwards about losing 14 cents and ad revenue or something weird like that. I agree. Growing up, I never really had the privilege of going to a lot of musical theater, ballet, opera. I still have yet to go to an opera. And I think that ties into a little bit into what he said about it, which I'll touch on later. I was fortunate enough in my adult life to be able to go to ballets, to a lot of musical theater. When my husband and I went on our trip to Europe, I was able to see 2 West End plays, which is essentially like going to New York and watching Broadway. And let me tell you, at least in musical theater, because I feel like ballet and opera very much stays to its roots. And so there's not a whole lot of innovation there in
Mm.
terms of technology and the use of technology within those mediums. But when I saw the Stranger Things production,
Ooh.
my mind was blown. They actually did practical effects of a scene where it's kind of like a, what do you call that, fire escape type of,
Oh, okay.
it moved and somebody was falling back in slow motion. To this
Whoa.
day, I don't know how they did that on stage. I was like, me and Nick looked at each other and we were like, holy shit, I've never seen something like this in theater
Very cool.
before. So theater is changing as well. And obviously cinema has changed drastically in the span of its lifetime. But just because cinema has sort of kept up with the times in terms of
Mm.
technology doesn't make it any more culturally relevant.
Mm.
It might make it more popular in a sense, but I think that that popularity has a lot to do with other things rather than, oh, it's just better. You know
Well,
what I mean?
I personally think the reason it's popular is because there's easier access to it.
It's accessibility,
Yeah.
100%. And I remember discussing this with Nick when the comment was first made, and he actually brought up the accessibility thing, and he's like, how many small towns do you know have ballet houses or theater other than community theater?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people in rural communities and a lot of smaller towns, they don't have major theater houses that the like traveling Broadway shows will go to.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of traveling ballet shows that
Mm.
will show up there. And opera is even more
Exclusive.
exclusive in terms of its accessibility. And
Mm.
so, of course, when something is more accessible, it's going to be more popular. Like, duh. I remember an ex boyfriend of mine lived in a town that probably had 1,000 people in it. I kid you not. It was
Mm.
that small. And even they had a movie theater.
Wow.
It was a little indie podunk movie theater,
Mm-hmm.
but
But
even they had a
still.
movie theater. And so movie theaters and cinema are just more accessible,
Mm-hmm.
which breeds into the whole obsession and stan culture of celebrities that
Mm.
mostly happens with actors and particularly movie actors and musicians.
Yep.
Is like all of these things are way more accessible than,
Exactly.
unfortunately, ballet and opera. But as far as cultural relevance, it's all relevant. And some could argue that ballet and opera are more culturally significant
Mm.
and relevant than even cinema is.
And I think many cultures around the world that are not the United States would feel that because just the saturation of media and celebrity culture and pop culture, a lot of it gets derived from what's happening in the US.
Yeah.
And I mean, you go to other countries, and one of the things that apparently they make fun of us frequently about is that we're not as cultured as other countries
Totally.
because we kind of just fall into what they feel is very surface level, easy accessible media and things.
Is being entertained,
Yes.
essentially.
And so, for those who maybe are still on the fence, perhaps, here's the thing. Let's really think about what cinema and movies are. It's
Mhm.
storytelling, correct? And so you have actors who are pretending and taking on these stories that were written and bringing them to life. Where do you think storytelling came from? The art of storytelling started centuries before through the performing arts. If anything, culturally, if you look back at the history, the dramatization of characters and archetypes was displayed via ballet and opera because essentially in that art form, the whole idea was to bring an understanding of a theme, of a story, or of a character archetype to the audience that they would understand. And to
Mhm.
do that, you had to over dramatize this specific point and theme you wanted to bring across to the audience, especially when it came to singing via opera, or especially when you are dancing and you're bringing a story to life via movement through ballet. And it was to entertain and bring the story to life. That essentially, just with time and technology, evolved into when cinema became something now we had the technology to produce and bring to the people. It's wild to me to think that someone within performing arts, because as an actor, you're still a performing arts actor,
Yeah.
the fact that you would think that this history, this rich history that was the starting point for what you do today has no relevance.
Yeah, and to play devil's advocate, I
Mhm.
think that what he was really saying wasn't so much that it's not relevant at all, but
No
that
one cares.
cinema
Mm.
has really been at the forefront. And I mean, storytelling has existed in even ancient civilizations. When you think about like cave drawings and things like
Mhm.
that, that is a form of storytelling. Then you have writing. Ballet and opera are the beginning of that storytelling coming into a visual world.
Mm.
And we're talking about ballet being 500 years old, opera being 400 years old. They have stood the test of time in terms of their
Mhm.
longevity. And obviously, cinema is a lot younger.
Mhm.
And in the beginning, it wasn't the center of the art universe. And each of these art forms has had their time of being
Mhm.
at the center, of being the most popular thing, the thing to do, the place to go.
Mm.
And so it's not to say that there won't be other art forms in the future that will be at the forefront. I don't think necessarily that cinema is always going to be the most popular, the biggest thing. Again, accessibility. A
Mm.
lot of people have TVs in their homes. It's easy to watch a program as opposed to trying to fight for tickets because a lot of ballet and opera tickets sell out. And
Mhm.
so getting dressed and going to the live performance, not everybody is willing to do that. Sometimes they just want to be at home and be cozy on their couch. And so what do they turn to? They turn to movies and they turn to TV. So yes, I think that in terms of popularity and in terms of like fan obsession and phenomena, cinema is up there. It provides a fame, infamy, and wealth in ways that opera and ballet don't anymore. They did
Mhm.
at one point,
Yeah.
but they don't necessarily do anymore in the same
Mhm.
fashion. And that I think is what he was really talking about when he said that
Mhm.
no one cares. Is he's
Yes.
talking about the fandom. He's talking about people being obsessed. And it's really it gives you the ick
Yes.
because you're like, okay, so are you in it for the love of the art form? Because that's why people in ballet do ballet. That's why people in opera do opera. Because yes, they have a talent, but they also have a passion. And they're
Mhm.
not doing it for the fame or the infamy or the wealth because they know
Mhm.
that it's not there. They're doing it for the love of the art. They want to be the best for the art form,
Mhm.
not just for notoriety. And it seems to me like what you care about is notoriety and you want cinema to be at the top of the pyramid when it comes to relevance, and that if it falls down, you're out.
Mhm. Because let's think about it. Especially he's fairly young. I believe he's definitely younger than us.
Yeah.
And so he's a kid who grew up already with the YouTube world and YouTube fame. And
He used to be on YouTube.
that is why, and that was something I only recently learned. And I feel like that explains so much.
It does.
Because really, like when people came into the YouTube sphere, when YouTubers were starting to become popular and famous and
Mhm.
we're just on the brink of being monetized and making money, which
Yeah.
was maybe 10 years after YouTube's started. That era started like suddenly every kid wanted to grow up and become YouTube famous. So very few found talent outside of YouTube and either became comedians, actors, singers, musicians, whatever. So here's this kid who wanted clearly to become YouTube famous at one point and tried and failed, but has an amazing talent for acting and got picked up pretty young to start
Yeah.
doing roles and experiencing that lifestyle. It's so sad that really essentially, and this has a lot to do with American culture, we have given such hierarchy and superiority to actors and celebrities. I mean, just think about how much they get freaking paid. That's wild. That actors, I mean, granted, I again used to be an actor. And yes, obviously, eventually I would have loved to get paid to do the art. But to think that now it's almost an expectation that you're not even good enough unless you're being paid millions per
Yeah.
movie is wild. I mean, doctors who spend more hours doing their job than you as an actor,
Saving
saving
lives.
lives, don't even get a fourth of what you get paid as a freaking actor. And so now it's almost like I think these younger generations, not all, who are growing up, it's like, okay, Yeah, being a celebrity actor is the goal, because at this point it's almost like you're not even good enough, which is sad because I find a lot of older generation actors have kind of decided this lifestyle of having no privacy, being followed,
Mhm.
being scrutinized for every little thing I do say, thing. That's not what I came into this for. And a lot of them
Right.
have gone back to even like just theater and stayed away from the Hollywood lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so I find it interesting when we started breaking down what the core meaning of what he said probably was. No one cares anymore about those performing art forms. It's essentially in comparison to being a celebrity
Yes.
actor who's going to be an Oscar winning, who's going to be on every tabloid, who's going to be making the
Not yet
millions per
anyway.
movie. That's so sad that your main goal, because he is a good actor. He has a
Yeah, he's very
talent.
talented.
It's like that really should be what brings you joy, is no matter what happens financially, celebrity wise, like if you really love what you do and you're clearly
Mhm.
good at it, that should be what you care about.
Totally. I think that obviously, in any sort of career, you want stability, but there's a difference between being stable
Mm,
and having stable work and being sort of arrogant of like, I need to be the best and at the top. Even within acting, there's a
mm,
hierarchy, you know,
mhm,
television acting, soap opera acting, television acting,
mhm.
cinema, and then what kind of movies are they? Oscar award winning movies, or are, you know, like, just to be
Indie, yeah.
nominated for that prestigious award puts you in a different caliber when it comes to acting, and it's all ridiculous at the end of the
Mhm.
day. Despite the parasocial relationships that people have with actors thinking that they saved their lives, it's the art form that
Yeah.
helped you through your mental health issue. It's the art form that made you feel something, and it's not the person, necessarily the person performing. And
Mhm.
despite those parasocial relationships, these people are not saving lives, and I think that we need to continue to separate the fact that these are just actors. They're pretending. One of the things that I thought is, how is this actor who got famous doing these really thoughtful, provoking indie movies such a shallow huddle of a human being? And then I realized it's because they're good at pretending. You know who else is really good at pretending? Sociopaths. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that actors are sociopaths, but mimicking emotion
Mm,
is a talent, but it's not a
mhm.
talent worthy of our adoration.
Well,
Just because a
mm.
character is deep and thoughtful and makes you feel things does not mean that the person performing that character is that way.
Well, and not just that, the credit you're giving this actor who made this performance, they didn't write the words, they didn't write the character, they didn't make up
No.
any of it. So they essentially have nothing to do with the character that you are like putting up on this pedestal. They're just emulating the emotion behind the words someone else wrote, behind the character
Yeah.
someone else created. So they
And
are just barely a piece of what it is.
I get that they have a talent that not everybody has, but you
Yeah.
could say that about any profession. I don't have the talent to perform fucking surgeries. You know what I mean? Like, I shake too much. I don't have the brain to remember all the things that medical professionals
Mm,
have to remember. I was a nursing assistant at one point and I found
yeah.
it to be overwhelming. People have certain capacities for certain
Mhm,
things, but just because you have a capacity to evoke emotion,
mhm,
which makes people feel things, and
mhm.
because you can do it well in a way that seems very natural and realistic, does not mean that you belong at the top of this pyramid of social hierarchy where people just need to like, oh, you're so wonderful, you're so great. And I'm kind of sick of it. Getting back on to the topic, ballet and opera have so much cultural relevance. I mean, even in terms of like fashion, you see
Mm.
a lot of the costuming of opera and ballet being mimicked and replicated in fashion. And don't get me wrong, costuming on movies, especially movies
Oh,
like
yeah.
Dune, which he happens to be in, they're amazing. But you don't necessarily see a lot of that on the runway in like
Mhm.
your normal average everyday movie where they're just wearing plain clothes.
Mm.
It's usually those very specific futuristic or maybe time
Sci-fi.
period type of
Mhm.
movies where they take some inspiration But with ballet and opera, you see that inspiration. I mean, there was a time when everybody and their mother was wearing ballet flats.
Yep, I did.
You know?
But that's the funny thing is that still these movie costume designers, where do you think the origin of their art came from? It
Yeah.
came from ballet and opera from centuries ago. When they study costume design, they have to study within the
Mhm.
history books of what opera and ballet and theater created in those times. And they're learning from just that evolution of fashion. The history of all that is essentially rooted in those performing art forms.
I totally agree. And think about it too. Think about it from this perspective. Opera and ballet have stayed true to what they are in terms of they have no need to keep up with the times, whereas cinema is constantly changing and evolving. And I'm not necessarily saying that they have to stay relevant, but I am saying that ballet and opera doesn't have to remain relevant. Opera performers are doing operas that were written centuries ago. People are doing ballets that were done centuries ago. In musical theater, even, if we can throw that in there.
Yeah.
You know, think about how long Cats ran for. Think about how long Phantom of the Opera ran for.
Les Mis.
Exactly. All of these art pieces have stood the test of time. We're not necessarily, no offense, be looking back at Dune 100, 200 years from now as this very culturally significant piece of art form.
But you know what's funny? Actually,
what?
We won't look back at the cinema version of Dune. The art form of writing the book is going to last longer and outweigh.
And it has. Look at fucking Lord of the Rings. People know Tolkien in and out. Yes, Peter Jackson took that and he adapted it into movies and they're great and people love them.
Yeah.
And they may end up watching them decades from now. But in terms of the cultural significance, it's the book.
Yeah.
It's the book that brought the cultural significance, the storytelling that brought the cultural significance and the impact. Exactly. And again, I think it's cultural significance versus fanfare.
Yeah.
When it comes to a lot of just like the acting aspect and the sort of hero worship of acting. But one thing I did want to get into, because I think it's another reason for why he said this, is like this projection of this fear of becoming irrelevant. It's almost like he's projecting that onto ballet and opera when really the fear is that cinema is going to become irrelevant at some point. Because think about it, when cinema started, it was on film. Now it's digital. And then we went from digital DVDs to now streaming. And streaming has really changed cinema as a whole, and to the point where people think that movie theaters are dying and that sooner or later it's just going to all be streaming. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because actors will still be acting.
Yeah.
But now we have the introduction of AI. And so, do you know what AI cannot replace? Live performances.
That's what I find very interesting. It's like, here is a new form of technology that can essentially, or is starting to prove essentially, that it can do what these actors on film do. But at the end of the day, AI can never get on a stage and perform ballet physically, maybe on a screen, but not as a
in
live
person
performance.
Yeah.
As it is, and this had just happened recently before we discussed doing this episode. Did you hear about Val Kilmer?
No. What about it?
Apparently, his family have given their blessing. He was working on a movie before he passed from the throat cancer.
Man.
And his family just gave permission to the studios to make an AI rendition of him as the lead actor of a movie that is going to come out.
Not to finish that film?
No,
or a different movie?
It was a movie that they were working on pre-production. There was no filming yet. But they're going to now make an AI version of him. And the wild thing is, looking at the comments, people were like, yeah, but it doesn't mean it's going to be bad. His family said it was okay. And other people are like, yeah, but that should only be from the consent of the actual actor. And my argument was, okay, it'll look like him, but the performance isn't going to be him. It's not going to be his choices for emotion, for line delivery. It's going to essentially be a robot computer who's going to make these acting choices for him. All you did was slap his picture on a robot so it
Yeah.
looks like him, but it won't be him.
No. And at the end of the day, regardless of how you feel about that, I think the point more so is that it can be done.
It's
And
officially now being presented as we've gotten here.
so when Paul Walker passed away, they used his brother as a stand-in, but they CGI'd Paul Walker's face. And it was a moment that it was a very brief scene at the end of the movie. And it was a little uncomfortable because you could tell it was CGI. But at the same time, you were like, they had pretty much put that whole movie. They'd filmed that whole movie. So it's like it made sense in that moment, and it was his brother, and it didn't feel icky. Whereas this, even though the family has given their blessing, this didn't need to happen, because even if it was in pre-production, if nothing was filmed, then it didn't need to happen. This is not a Queen of the Damned moment where like Aaliyah passed away before the movie came out, and then like they
or Philip Seymour Hoffman in The Hunger Games. He had already started filming part 2 of Mockingjay, passed, but see, they significantly cut his role
because of that.
and so yes, there was CGI moments of him, but he didn't actually, it was like him just sitting somewhere just to because he wasn't done
to be in it.
Yeah.
This is a whole other level. And see, it's already happening with commercials. Nick and I, in doing research for this, he found me commercials that were fully AI because he detects it way better than I do. But there was a McDonald's commercial that was fully AI. And there were moments where it was hard to tell, even for me. And the emotion is very real. Like the way that AI conveys emotion.
Scary.
Because there are actors that are like, AI could never do what I do.
That's
and
what
I'm
they're
like,
still saying, yeah.
No, they can. It can. And yes, they can't in the sense that the nuances, the choices, like you said with Val Kilmer, that they're different. But that doesn't mean that they can't convey emotion in an effective way. And let's be honest, our culture is a bit of a dumpster when it comes to entertainment. We accept a lot.
Yeah.
We accept a lot of mediocre, bad even, and some of that is even enjoyable.
Yeah.
We've talked about like how we love to watch bad movies.
Yeah, and trash TV, trash reality TV, like it's still something people, I mean, I watch Love is Blind. It's trash reality.
And so the point is that people just want to be entertained. So
Yep.
if you think that moviegoers are not going to eventually accept an AI film,
They're not going to hold
dreaming.
standard. Yeah, they are not going to hold high standards against the art form dying.
You may have some people, like myself, I probably won't engage with it with an AI acted movie, but that doesn't mean that there are not going to be hundreds and thousands and millions of other people that would.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, I think you're being a little cocky and a little arrogant to think that you could not be replaceable. Because if AI can replace artists, visual artists, why can't it replace performing artists on a screen?
Yeah.
Obviously, live is different, which makes it a little bit safer from AI. But Disney even has tried to do this, and yes, they got backlash for it, and I'm glad that they did. But they tried to do that with background actors. They wanted to have their likeness forever and ever, amen, and use that in the background to not have to pay. These celebrities are making hefty salaries. You don't think that the studios would love to save that coin and put it in their own pockets? These people are greedy as shit. Cinema started out for the love of the art, but just like every other company, every other business out there, it is now about money and it is about profit. And I know this because I will never forget this interview that I saw with Matt Damon when he talked about movies that he used to make versus what he makes now, and how he used to make a lot more thoughtful dramas like Good Will Hunting. But that movies like that, if you have noticed, have significantly dropped as far as being made. You have a couple of them that will be at the Sundance Film Festival. They'll get awards. They'll be up for Oscars. But there are so far few between now because studios used to make income in two ways. When the movie came out in movie theaters and then when it came out in DVD.
Yeah.
And streaming fucked that up.
Yeah.
And so now studios don't want to take risks because they don't have that second wave of income coming in with DVDs. So it has changed the landscape of cinema, and it will change again. And if they're about profit, which they have proven themselves to be, because why aren't they making these potentially culturally significant films just because it might not make enough money? What do you think? You don't think they don't want to save that $50 million that they're going to pay this actor, this one actor? One actor. Forget about the rest of the supporting cast or the background actors and all of that stuff. And that's how it's going to start. It's going to start with the background actors that don't have lines. And then eventually it's going to, and look,
not
the
that
movie that you're talking about. Yeah.
I mean, it's here. They're going to put a legendary actor as the lead role, and he is going to be completely AI because he no longer exists on the plains of this earth.
And honestly, people are already worried about it because in that same interview with Timothée Chalamet, Matthew McConaughey said that he thinks that every actor should own the rights to their likeness and their voice. Why do you think he would say that?
Because he knows what's going on.
Because AI will use your likeness and your voice. I mean, they do it with singers already. I just scrolled on YouTube the other day and I saw what I thought was a new music video from Britney Spears. And I was like, I thought she was retired. It was completely AI.
That's so wild. That's so crazy. It's so scary.
I don't know if and who knows if they ask permission to do that? Who knows if they even need to? Because there was never a point in history where like, oh, should we own the rights to our face and our voice to make sure that nobody uses it? That was never a thought in our brains because there was not a scenario in which that needed to happen. And now there is, and especially for actors and singers and musicians.
I mean, they're still trying to regulate legally deep fake stuff that people are getting caught in and that had no choice. They had no choice and they're being used and there were no laws to protect people because this wasn't a thing we'd ever had encountered because the technology wasn't there until now. So who knows if the permission legally is even there to protect those who people are stealing their likeness.
And it likely won't be because the current administration that we have does not want to regulate AI.
Nope.
So
they're using it constantly for their socials.
Yeah, who knows of the possibilities of where AI is going to in terms of it not being regulated. I mean, there are some intense things that could happen with it. All that to say is that actors are not safe. And
essentially, I think that's the point is that personally, I think, and I believe Heather agrees, is Timothy's comment was actually rooted in this very real fear. There's an arrogance that I think he doesn't want to believe it and he thinks he's better and superior to that happening. So projecting his fear against the art forms that is ballet and opera. But like you said, those are live performances that AI will never threaten. And here is the one industry that, he finds so superior, but it already is being threatened and can very easily replace him tomorrow.
And honestly, it's only superior because of its accessibility.
Yes.
And the price tag to go and watch a movie is less expensive than to go to a ballet performance, to go to see an opera. It's less expensive even to go see musical theater.
Yeah.
Because live performance is different. I mean, there is no cut. There is no let's do that again. I want to evoke a different emotion. It is completely in the moment. You get it or you don't get it kind of thing. And so
these actors, especially in like musical theater, they're doing it more than once a day. And they're doing it eight times a week, back to back to back to back, like strenuous on your body, on your mental health, on your
Yeah.
emotions. Like there is a lot that these actors have to put in to bring us this art form.
Yeah. And they're not just acting, they're singing, they're dancing. All that to say is that it was an incredibly ignorant comment that
Agreed.
I'm sure maybe another possible reason of why it was said was to purposely disturb controversy because it was award season, and it accomplished that. But at the end of the day, the egg is on your face because everybody and their mother is like, no, honey, no.
Sweet summer child, no.
And if anything, your insecurity is showing about your own industry and the potential, because he had said it before on the Graham Norton show, but he said it in a way of, I was worried that movies were going to go in the same direction as opera and become irrelevant. And I'm glad that it's not, because he desperately wanted to get into acting. And I was like, oh, but there can come a day, baby. So obviously, Desiree and I are super passionate about this topic. I think that all art forms should be respected, and all art forms are appreciated, and they're all relevant, and they're all culturally significant, and we should respect them. So people who are listening, people who are watching, we want to hear from you guys on what you think about this. Please share your opinion. I know some people must have some very interesting things to say. And if you don't agree, and if you are on the side of Tiny Tim, that's okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. And if you give it, please be respectful to one another, as always. And, but we do want to hear from you, and we want to hear what your opinion is on this whole thing.
So friends, you can go and give us those opinions over on YouTube, on Instagram, even on some of the podcast platforms that do allow comments now. Please come share. We would love to chat with you. And while you're there, do all of those internet things, like, subscribe, follow. And while you're doing that, friends, if you could do us a favor, and if you are listening on a podcast platform, could you leave us a review? You can either review the show, you can review a single episode. Reviewing is a huge help with the algorithm. So by all means, please let them know that we exist, that we're here. Thank you guys for hanging out with us this week and for hearing us out. Until next week.
Bye.